My name is Alice, and I am 68 years old. Standing alone at Boston Logan International Airport, I watched my son Will and his wife Jessica board a plane to Hawaii, a vacation I had paid $45,000 for. When I arrived at our meeting spot, my son called and said those crushing words, "You're not coming with us." I overheard his wife whisper, "Finally a vacation without this old lady." I returned home heartbroken but determined. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from, and don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. How can love transform into such deep betrayal? My story begins many years ago. 15 years have passed since I lost my husband Richard to a sudden heart attack. We had been married for 33 wonderful years, building a life together in our beautiful colonial home in Lexington, just outside of Boston. Richard was a successful investment banker, and I worked my way up to branch manager at Citizens Bank. We were comfortable, happy, and deeply in love. Our son William, Will, as we always called him, was our only child. Richard and I poured everything into raising him, ensuring he had every opportunity we could provide. Will was 27 when his father died, already working at a marketing firm downtown, but the loss hit him hard. Richard had been his hero, his mentor, his fishing buddy, and his confidant. In those early grief-filled years, Will and I grew even closer. Every Sunday, he would come over for dinner. We would talk for hours about his work, his dating life, and memories of Richard. He helped me navigate the complexities of home ownership that Richard had always handled. Fixing the leaky bathroom faucet, negotiating with the landscaper, changing air filters in places I could barely reach. I in turn continued to be his emotional anchor, the constant in his life as he built his career. "I don't know what I would do without you, Mom," Will would often say, his father's green eyes so familiar in his face. I worked at the bank until I was 60, putting away as much as I could in my retirement accounts. Richard had left me financially secure with life insurance and our mortgage-free home, but I wanted to make sure I would never be a burden to Will. I wanted to be able to help him if he ever needed it, and help him I did. When Will wanted to get his MBA to advance his career, I paid for his tuition, $70,000 that he promised to repay someday. When he needed a reliable car, I covered the down payment. When his apartment building was sold and he needed first, last, and security deposit for a new place, I wrote the check. These weren't loans in my mind. They were investments in my son's happiness and future. Everything changed 7 years ago when Will met Jessica at a company retreat. She was beautiful, ambitious, and 10 years younger than him. Within 6 months, they were engaged. I was thrilled that my son had found love again after several failed relationships. At their engagement party, I pulled Jessica aside. "Welcome to our family," I told her, giving her my mother-in-law's pearl necklace as a gift. "I'm so happy Will found you." Jessica smiled, accepting the pearls with a polite thank you, but something in her eyes seemed calculating, assessing me and my home with a keen interest that went beyond normal curiosity. The wedding was lavish, far more expensive than Will and Jessica could afford. When they mentioned they were considering a small courthouse ceremony because of costs, I immediately offered to pay. $50,000 later, Jessica had her dream wedding at the Boston Harbor Hotel with a designer dress and exotic flower arrangements that cost more than my first car. "We'll pay you back, Mom," Will assured me at the reception, hugging me tight. "Once we're settled." I waved away his promise. "Don't worry about it. Your happiness is all the repayment I need." But after the wedding, our Sunday dinners became monthly, then quarterly occurrences. Phone calls grew shorter, with Will always seeming in a rush. When they did visit, Jessica would walk through my home commenting on how vintage everything was, suggesting renovations that would bring it into this century. Will and Jessica lived in a luxury apartment in Back Bay, an expensive area they struggled to afford on their combined salaries. Each month seemed to bring a new financial crisis. Car repairs, medical bills, work wardrobes, professional development courses. And each time I opened my checkbook, Just until my bonus comes through, Will would say. We'll definitely pay you back this time, Jessica would add, though no repayment ever materialized. I kept a record of these loans in a small notebook hidden in my desk drawer. Not because I intended to collect, but because even at my most generous, I wasn't entirely naive. The total had grown to over $120,000, not including the wedding or education costs. Despite this, they always seemed to have money for luxury items. Jessica had a collection of designer handbags. Will bought a motorcycle he rarely rode. Their social media showed dinners at exclusive restaurants and weekend getaways to New York or Miami. When I once gently asked about these expenses, Jessica quickly explained they were work necessities, or gifted by friends. As my 70th birthday approached, I decided to fulfill a lifelong dream. Richard and I had always talked about visiting Hawaii, staying in a beachfront villa, watching sunsets over the Pacific. We had planned to go for our 40th anniversary, but he died before we could make the trip. For years, I couldn't bear the thought of going without him, but approaching 70 made me realize time wasn't infinite. One Sunday, over a rare family dinner at my home, I shared my plan. I want to take us all to Hawaii for my birthday, I announced as I served homemade apple pie. My treat: first-class tickets, a private villa on the beach in Maui, the works. Just the three of us. Will's fork paused halfway to his mouth. He and Jessica exchanged a quick glance I couldn't interpret. Wow, Mom, Will finally said. That's really generous. Jessica's smile looked forced. How exciting, she said, her voice oddly flat. When are you thinking of going? 2 weeks in July, around my birthday. I've already looked into some villas we could rent. July? Jessica's voice trailed off. That's such a busy time at work for both of us. But I'm sure we can make it happen. Will jumped in, shooting his wife a look. Right, Jess, it's Mom's big birthday. Jessica nodded, but her enthusiasm seemed manufactured. Of course. It's just, are you sure you want to do all that traveling at your age? Alice, Hawaii is so far. I straightened my shoulders. I'm turning 70, not 90. My doctor says I'm in excellent health. Of course, she backpedaled. I just meant it's a long flight for anyone. Little did I know that this conversation was the beginning of the most painful betrayal of my life. One that would force me to rethink everything I thought I knew about my son and the family bonds I held sacred. I threw myself into planning the perfect Hawaiian vacation with the enthusiasm of someone finally fulfilling a long-postponed dream. Each evening, I researched luxury villas, exclusive restaurants, and special experiences we could enjoy together. I wanted this trip to create beautiful memories for all of us. Perhaps even heal some of the distance that had grown between us. After extensive research, I found the perfect accommodation, a stunning 3-bedroom villa on Wailea Beach, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the ocean, a private infinity pool, and daily housekeeping service. The cost made me wince, $12,000 for 10 days, but I reminded myself this was a once-in-a-lifetime celebration. I called Will to share the exciting news. I found the perfect place in Maui, I told him, unable to contain my excitement. It's absolutely breathtaking, right on the beach with the most gorgeous sunsets. That's great, Mom, Will responded, but I could hear him typing on his computer as we spoke, only half listening. I'm about to put down the deposit. It's quite popular, so we need to secure it now. Should I go ahead and book it? The typing stopped. Yeah, sure. How much is it? When I told him the price, he whistled. Wow, that's generous of you, Mom. It's a special occasion, I said, and I've always wanted to see Hawaii. Right, of course. There was a pause. Hey, could you send me the confirmation details once you book it? Jessica wants to plan some activities. I was thrilled by Jessica's apparent interest. Of course, I'll forward everything right away. I spent the next day booking first-class flights, another $15,000 for the three of us. I wanted the entire experience to be luxurious and stress-free. I added airport transfers and limousines, travel insurance, and even reserved several special experiences: a private sunset cruise, a helicopter tour of the islands, and a traditional Hawaiian luau at the famous Grand Wailea Resort. As promised, I sent all the confirmation details to Will's email. Within an hour, Jessica called me directly, something that rarely happened. "Alice, these bookings look amazing," she gushed, suddenly warm and enthusiastic. "I had a quick question, though. The villa has 3 bedrooms, right?" "Yes, a master suite for you and Will, a lovely second bedroom for me, and a third bedroom that could be a den or office." "Perfect," she said. "And what was the check-in process again? Do they mail physical keys, or is there a lockbox?" I explained the digital check-in process, somewhat puzzled by her specific questions, but pleased by her engagement. "Everything is in Will's name, since you two will probably arrive before me. My flight gets in about 2 hours after yours." "Oh," Jessica's voice rose slightly. "I thought we were all on the same flights." "I tried, but the first-class cabin only had 2 seats left on your flight, so I booked myself on the next one. Don't worry, the airport transfer will wait for me and I'll meet you at the villa." "I see," Jessica said. "Well, that works out fine." Over the next few weeks, I noticed something odd. Whenever I brought up specific activities we could do together in Hawaii, Will and Jessica would change the subject or make vague comments. When I suggested snorkeling at Molokini Crater, Jessica suddenly remembered a conference call. When I mentioned the traditional luau I'd booked, Will said they might be too tired after the flight. I met my friend Barbara for coffee one afternoon and shared my concerns. "They're acting strange about this trip," I confided. "Almost like they don't want to do anything with me once we're there." Barbara, never one to mince words, set down her cup firmly. "Alice, are you sure they're planning to include you at all? This whole thing sounds fishy. They're happy to let you pay, but they're avoiding any talk about actually spending time with you." "That's ridiculous," I protested. "Why would they do that? It's my birthday trip." "Because they're taking advantage of you," Barbara said bluntly. "Just like they've been doing for years." I dismissed Barbara's concerns as overly cynical, but her words planted a seed of doubt I couldn't quite shake. That evening, I received an odd text from Will. "Mom, can you send me the confirmation number for the villa again? And actually, could you transfer the reservation entirely to my name? The rental company called about some verification issue." It seemed strange, but I complied, calling the rental company to authorize putting everything in Will's name. The customer service representative seemed confused about the verification issue, but made the change as requested. A week before the trip, Will and Jessica came for dinner. I had prepared all of Will's favorites: pot roast with roasted potatoes, homemade rolls, and strawberry shortcake for dessert. "I can't wait for Hawaii," I said as we ate. "I've made a list of all the places your father and I dreamed of visiting." Jessica exchanged a glance with Will. "About that," she said carefully, "we might want some time to ourselves too. To explore independently." "Oh." I tried to hide my disappointment. "Of course, we don't have to do everything together." "Exactly." Will jumped in, looking relieved. "We can meet up for dinners and stuff." "And you'll probably want to rest more than we will," Jessica added. "At your age, all that sun and activity can be exhausting." There it was again, a reference to my age as if I were infirm rather than an active, healthy woman who still swam 3 times a week and took daily 2-mile walks. As they were leaving, Will hugged me awkwardly. "Don't worry about airport transportation," he said. "We can handle getting to and from the airports ourselves." "But I've already paid for the car service," I protested. "Just cancel it," Jessica said quickly. "We prefer to make our own arrangements." As their car pulled away, Barbara's warnings echoed in my mind. For the first time, I allowed myself to wonder if my son and his wife were planning something I wouldn't like. The morning of our departure arrived with perfect July weather, clear blue skies, and a gentle breeze that seemed to promise adventure. I had packed and repacked my suitcase several times, wanting to be prepared for every possible occasion in Maui. My excitement had pushed aside the lingering concerns about Will and Jessica's behavior. I woke at 5 a.m. hours before my 11 a.m. flight, too excited to sleep. After a light breakfast, I double-checked my passport itinerary and the small gift bags I had prepared for Will and Jessica, each containing a new pair of Ray-Ban sunglasses, Hawaiian shirts from a specialty shop in Boston, and waterproof pouches for their phones. At 7:30, I called the taxi service I had used for years. "Airport, please, Terminal B," I told the dispatcher. "I'm traveling to Hawaii today." "Big trip," the driver commented when he arrived. "Special occasion." "My 70th birthday," I replied, unable to contain my smile. "Going with my son and his wife." "That's wonderful," he said, loading my suitcase into the trunk. "Family vacations are the best." I arrived at Logan Airport by 8:30, a full 2.5 hours before my flight. Will and Jessica's flight was scheduled for 9 a.m., so I hurried to their terminal first, hoping to wish them a good flight before going to my own gate. When I didn't see them at the check-in counter, I sent Will a text. "I'm at the airport. Where are you? Wanted to say bon voyage before your flight." After 10 minutes with no response, I called. The call went straight to voicemail. I tried again with the same result. A flutter of anxiety began in my chest, but I reasoned they must be going through security or had their phones off for some reason. I decided to wait near their gate, thinking I could at least see them before they boarded. 9 o'clock came and went. 9:30. Still no sign of them, and no response to my messages. At 9:45, just 15 minutes before their scheduled departure, I finally received a text. "Running late? Don't wait for us. Meet at the villa." Something felt wrong. The flight to Maui was over 11 hours. Missing it would mean a complete rescheduling nightmare. I called Will immediately. This time he answered. "Mom?" He sounded strange, his voice tight. "Will, where are you? The flight is boarding in minutes." There was a pause, some muffled voices in the background. "We're at the airport, Mom, at a different gate." "Different gate? Let me come to you. Which gate?" Another pause. "Look, Mom, there's something you should know." My heart began to race. "What is it? Is something wrong?" You're not coming with us on this trip." The words didn't make sense at first. I must have misheard. "What do you mean? Of course I'm coming. I booked everything. My flight leaves in 2 hours." "The thing is, Mom..." Will's voice had that placating tone he used when asking for money. "Jessica and I invited some friends to join us. We're traveling as a group." I felt lightheaded. "Friends? What friends? The villa only has 3 bedrooms." "We actually booked a different place, one with more rooms." "You what? With what money?" As soon as I asked, I knew the answer. My money. The money I had transferred for the original villa. "We can explain everything when we get back," Will said hurriedly. "Our group is boarding now." "We'll wait." I was practically shouting now, drawing concerned looks from nearby travelers. "I don't understand. This was my birthday trip. I paid for everything." "I know, Mom, and we're really grateful. We'll make it up to you, I promise. Maybe we can take you somewhere else another time." In the background, I heard Jessica's voice. "Is that your mother? Tell her we have to go." Then more faintly, as if she had turned away from the phone, but not quite far enough. "Finally, a vacation without this old lady hovering over us the whole time." The casual cruelty of her words struck me like a physical blow. "Will," I managed to say, my voice shaking, "put Jessica on the phone." "Mom, we really have to board." "Put her on now." There was shuffling, then Jessica's voice artificially sweet. "Alice, I'm so sorry about the confusion. We thought you understood this was going to be a trip with our friends. You know how Will has been working so hard, and he really needs to blow off steam with people his own age." "People his own age," I repeated numbly. "I see. It's not personal. She continued, her tone suggesting it was very personal indeed. It's just that the activities we're planning wouldn't really be appropriate for someone in your condition. My condition, I swim 3 times a week. I walk 2 miles every day. You know what I mean. Her voice hardened slightly. Look, we have to go. The gate agent is glaring at us. Wait, I said desperately. What about my $45,000, the flights, the villa, everything I paid for? Will can sort all that out when we get back, Jessica said dismissively. Gotta go. The line went dead. I stood frozen in the terminal, my phone still pressed to my ear as the magnitude of the betrayal washed over me. Around me, travelers rushed to gates, reunited with loved ones, began adventures together. I had never felt so alone. Somehow, I managed to make my way to a row of seats near a window. Outside, a plane was taking off, possibly the very one carrying my son and his wife to the vacation I had paid for. Tears blurred my vision as the aircraft climbed into the cloudless blue sky, taking with it my dreams of family celebration and reconnection. I sat there for nearly an hour, alternating between disbelief, heartbreak, and a slow-burning anger that was entirely unfamiliar to me. Finally, I called the airline and canceled my ticket, accepting the partial refund that would be processed within 6 to 8 weeks. Then I called another taxi and asked to be taken home. As the taxi pulled away from the airport, I watched another plane take off and made a decision. This betrayal would not be met with tears and forgiveness. Not this time. By the time Will and Jessica returned from Hawaii, they would discover that some actions have consequences, even when they're committed against someone who loves you unconditionally. The taxi ride home from the airport was a blur of tears and shocked disbelief. I barely registered the concerned glances from the driver or the familiar streets of my neighborhood sliding past the windows. All I could hear was Jessica's dismissive voice. Finally a vacation without this old lady. As soon as I got home, I called Barbara. My hands shook so badly I could hardly dial. They left without me, I said when she answered, my voice breaking. They took the money I sent for the villa and booked something else with their friends. Those ungrateful little... Barbara stopped herself. I'm coming over. Don't move. 30 minutes later, Barbara was at my kitchen table, pouring us both generous glasses of wine despite the early hour. Tell me everything, she demanded. I recounted the humiliating scene at the airport, Jessica's cruel comment, and Will's weak excuses. $45,000, I concluded, staring into my wineglass. My entire travel fund, money I'd been saving since Richard died for that special trip we never got to take. Barbara's face was flushed with anger. This isn't just taking advantage anymore, Alice. This is elder abuse, financial exploitation. I'm not some senile old woman, I protested. I gave them the money willingly. Under false pretenses, Barbara countered. You gave it for a specific purpose, a family vacation that included you. They committed fraud. I hadn't thought of it that way, but Barbara's words resonated with something hardening inside me. This wasn't just a thoughtless oversight or a misunderstanding. This was calculated deception. After Barbara left, promising to check on me the next day, I sat alone in my quiet house. The tears had stopped, replaced by a cold clarity I hadn't felt in years. I went to my home office and pulled out the notebook where I'd recorded all the loans to Will and Jessica. Page after page documented their financial requests: $12,000 for MBA application fees and first semester tuition, $8,000 for a security deposit and first month's rent, $5,000 for Will's emergency dental work, $3,000 for Jessica's professional certification course, $20,000 toward their wedding, countless smaller amounts for car repairs, medical bills, professional wardrobes. Next to each amount was the date and Will's promise to repay soon, or when things settle down, or after my next bonus. Not a single entry had been repaid in 7 years. I found my old financial planner binder from my banking days and began a thorough accounting. Beyond the loans, there were birthday and Christmas gifts, spontaneous treats, grocery shopping when they visited, restaurant meals I always insisted on paying for. By the most conservative estimate, I had given them over $200,000 since they got married. Then I did something I should have done years ago. I reviewed my will. After Richard died, I had updated it to leave everything to Will, the house worth nearly $1 million in today's market. My retirement accounts, the small portfolio of stocks Richard had managed, and the life insurance money I had carefully invested. Will was my only child, my flesh and blood. Who else would I leave it to? But now, staring at the legal document, all I could see was Jessica calculating the value of my assets while pretending to admire my home. I could hear her dismissive, "This old lady," and see Will's uncomfortable expression as he chose his wife over his mother time and again. I dug deeper into my files and found the deed to the house. Richard had been meticulous about paperwork, and everything was in order. The house was completely paid off and solely in my name. Will had no legal claim to it whatsoever. As night fell, a plan began to take shape in my mind. Will and Jessica would be in Hawaii for 10 days. That gave me plenty of time. First thing Monday morning, I called Howard Greenstein, my attorney who had handled Richard's estate. "Alice, lovely to hear from you," he greeted me warmly. "How can I help?" "I need to make some changes to my will," I said without preamble. "Significant changes." Howard's tone turned serious. "I see. Why don't you come into the office tomorrow morning? We can discuss the details in person." Next, I called Susan Peterson, my accountant of 20 years. "Susan, I need a complete accounting of all financial gifts to my son over the past 7 years. Tax implications, everything." "That's quite specific," Susan remarked. "Is everything all right?" "It will be," I assured her. "I'm finally getting my house in order." That evening, as I sat on my patio watching the sunset, I felt a strange mix of sadness and resolve. The son I had raised, the boy who once made me Mother's Day cards and called me his hero, had betrayed me in the most hurtful way possible. The pain was immense, but beneath it was something else, a determination to no longer be taken for granted or treated as an ATM with a convenient spare bedroom. I looked up at the sky and imagined Richard beside me. "You always said I was too soft on him," I whispered to the gathering darkness. "You were right, my love, but that ends now." Taking out my phone, I checked Instagram and found what I expected. Jessica had already posted photos. There they were on a beach in Maui, cocktails in hand, surrounded by 4 other couples I vaguely recognized from previous social media posts. The caption read, "Best vacation ever with our favorite people, no responsibilities, #living or best life, #adult time." In the comments, one of their friends had written, "So glad you guys could make it happen. Worth every penny." Jessica had responded with a winking emoji and, "Let's just say we had help from the Bank of Mom, LOL." I closed the app, my resolve strengthening. By the time Will and Jessica returned from their Hawaiian adventure, they would find things very different. The Bank of Mom was permanently closed, and the foreclosure notice had just been issued. The week that followed was the busiest I'd had in years. I threw myself into reclaiming control of my life with the same determination that had helped me rise through the ranks at the bank decades earlier. My first step was the most symbolic, changing the locks on my house. I contacted Boston security locksmiths and explained the situation in vague terms. "My son has a key, but I need to restrict access temporarily," I told the locksmith who arrived that afternoon. "I'd like all external doors rekeyed, please." "No problem, ma'am," he replied, already removing the first lock. "Happens more often than you'd think." As he worked, I wandered through the house, seeing it through new eyes. Will and Jessica had gradually established a presence here. Toiletries in the guest bathroom, some clothes in the spare bedroom closet, Jessica's favorite coffee mugs in my kitchen cabinet. They didn't live here, but they had colonized the space in small ways, claiming territory inch by inch. I gathered these items methodically, placing them in cardboard boxes I'd picked up from the liquor store down the street. As I packed, I discovered things I hadn't realized were missing from their usual places. My mother's silver picture frame that normally sat on the mantel, a crystal vase Richard had given me for our anniversary, several pieces of jewelry I wore infrequently. In the guest room closet behind Will's rarely worn suits, I found my grandmother's pearl necklace, the same one I had given Jessica as a welcome gift 7 years ago. She had claimed to have lost it last year after wearing it to a charity event. I added it to a separate box of recovered items along with the other borrowed pieces. The following day, I met with Howard Greenstein in his downtown office. He listened carefully as I explained the situation, his expression growing increasingly grave. "Alice, I'm so sorry this happened," he said when I finished. "Family betrayals are the most painful kind." "I need to make changes to my will," I reiterated. "I no longer want Will to be my sole beneficiary." Howard nodded. "What did you have in mind?" "I want to leave half of my estate to the Boston Children's Hospital Cancer Research Fund in Richard's memory. The other half to my niece Susan, my sister Jane's daughter. She's been more attentive and caring in the past 5 years than Will has been despite living 3 states away." "And the house?" Howard asked. I took a deep breath. "Nothing to Will. He and Jessica have made it clear they see me as a financial resource, not family. I won't reward that." Howard made notes asking clarifying questions about specific assets and accounts. "I'll have a draft of the new will ready by Friday," he promised. "In the meantime, I suggest you revoke any powers of attorney Will might have." I hadn't even considered that aspect. Years ago, I had made Will my medical and financial power of attorney in case of emergency. Howard helped me complete the paperwork to revoke these immediately, with my friend Barbara stepping in as my new designated agent. My next task was securing my finances. I visited my bank in person and removed Will as an authorized user on my accounts. The personal banker's eyes widened slightly when I explained my son had taken $45,000 under false pretenses, but she remained professional. "We'll update all your accounts immediately," she assured me. "And I'd recommend changing your online banking passwords as well, using a completely new pattern." I spent that afternoon updating passwords, reviewing credit card statements, and documenting any suspicious charges. There weren't many. Will and Jessica had been bold in their exploitation, but not particularly sneaky. They simply asked, and I gave. On Thursday, I asked Howard to prepare a formal letter demanding repayment of the loans Will had accumulated over the years. We settled on requesting repayment of the most recent amounts, the Hawaii trip funds, and the last 5 years of documented loans totaling just over $150,000. "This is legally enforceable," Howard explained. "We have your records, bank statements showing the transfers and text messages where Will acknowledges these were loans to be repaid." "I don't expect to see the money," I admitted. "This is about making a point." "The point will certainly be made," Howard assured me. Throughout these busy days, my phone remained silent. No calls or texts from Will or Jessica checking if I was okay after being abandoned at the airport. Instead, Jessica continued posting photos of their Hawaiian adventures. Sunset cruises, snorkeling trips, luau dinners. All activities I had researched and dreamed of experiencing with them. On their 5th day in Hawaii, Will finally sent a text. "Having an amazing time. The weather is perfect. Hope you're doing well." No apology. No acknowledgement of what they'd done. Just a casual message as if nothing had happened. I didn't respond. By the day before their scheduled return, everything was in place. The locks had been changed, the new will signed and notarized, financial accounts secured, and Howard's demand letter printed and sealed in an envelope. I had packed all of Will and Jessica's belongings into boxes and placed them in waterproof plastic bins in case of rain. As I sealed the last bin, I added one final item, a handwritten letter of my own. Unlike Howard's formal legal document, my letter expressed the emotional toll of their betrayal. I detailed every sacrifice I had made for Will throughout his life, every time I had put his needs above my own. I described the humiliation of standing alone at the airport, hearing Jessica dismiss me as this old lady. I concluded with words I never thought I would say to my only child. I have loved you unconditionally for 42 years, but I no longer recognize the man you've become. You and Jessica have made your priorities clear. Now I am making mine clear as well. This house is no longer your home. My finances are no longer your safety net. You are an adult who must live with the consequences of treating others, even your mother, as resources to be exploited rather than people to be respected. I hope someday you'll understand what you've thrown away. I placed this letter on top of Howard's legal document in a large manila envelope, sealed it, and tucked it into the largest plastic bin. Then I carried all the containers to the front porch, arranging them neatly beside the door where they couldn't be missed. That night, I hardly slept. I kept picturing Will's face when he realized what I had done. Would he be angry? Remorseful? Would he try to justify his actions? Would this be the wake-up call he needed, or would it sever our relationship permanently? As dawn broke on the day of their return, I made myself a cup of coffee and settled into a chair by the front window. Their flight would land at 2 p.m. Allowing for customs baggage and the drive from Logan, they would likely arrive around 4:30. The hours passed slowly as I alternated between certainty in my decision and waves of doubt. Was I overreacting? Should I forgive once more? But each time these questions arose, I remembered Jessica's casual cruelty and Will's willing betrayal, and my resolve strengthened again. At precisely 4:27, a taxi pulled up to my curb. Will and Jessica emerged, tanned and relaxed, pulling designer luggage behind them. They were laughing about something completely at ease. They hadn't even worried about me enough to dampen their vacation spirits. I took a deep breath and watched as they approached the house, about to discover that some lines once crossed cannot be uncrossed. From my vantage point behind the curtained window, I watched Will and Jessica approach my front door. They looked relaxed and happy, their skin golden from the Hawaiian sun. Jessica wore a new sundress I hadn't seen before, and Will had a fresh haircut. Little luxuries purchased with my money while I sat abandoned at an airport gate. Will reached for his keys and confidently inserted one into the front door lock. His casual certainty, the entitlement in his posture as he assumed access to my home, made my decision feel even more right. He twisted the key, then frowned when it didn't turn. "That's weird," I heard him say through the partially open window. He tried again, jiggling the key more forcefully. Jessica shifted impatiently beside him. "What's taking so long? I need a shower." "The key isn't working," Will replied, a note of confusion entering his voice. He stepped back and examined the door more carefully. "Did she change the locks?" Jessica rolled her eyes. "Why would she do that? You probably have the wrong key." "I don't have the wrong key. I've been using this key for 20 years. Will tried once more, then moved to the keypad on the garage door. After punching in the code, he frowned again when the door remained closed. "She changed the garage code, too." Only then did they notice the plastic bins stacked neatly beside the door. Will approached them cautiously, as if they might contain something dangerous. "What the hell is this?" Jessica asked, peering into the top bin. "Are these our things?" Will lifted the lid fully and spotted the manila envelope. He opened it and began reading the letter I had written, his expression changing from confusion to disbelief to something approaching horror. What is it?" Jessica demanded, trying to read over his shoulder. "She knows everything," Will said quietly. "About Hawaii, about us taking the money and going without her." "So what?" Jessica scoffed. "It's not like she needs the money, and she's always giving us things anyway." Will continued reading, the color draining from his face. "This isn't just about Hawaii. She's cutting us off. Completely. She's changed her will, revoked my power of attorney, everything. She can't do that, Jessica said, but uncertainty had crept into her voice. Will reached the final pages, Howard's formal demand letter. She wants us to repay $150,000 within 90 days, or she'll take legal action. $150,000? That's insane. We don't have that kind of money. Apparently we borrowed it, Will replied, leafing through the attached documentation. Over the past 5 years, plus the Hawaii money. Jessica snatched the papers from him. This is just a temper tantrum. She'll get over it. Will didn't seem convinced. He pulled out his phone and dialed my number. Inside the house, I heard my phone ring. I had been waiting for this call, rehearsing what I would say. Mom. Will's voice was a mix of anger and panic when I answered. What is all this? Why are our things outside? I think my letter explained everything quite clearly, I replied, keeping my voice steady. You changed the locks because of one misunderstanding. One misunderstanding? I repeated. Is that what you call stealing $45,000 and abandoning me at an airport? We didn't steal anything, Will protested. We were going to pay you back. Just like you were going to pay back the other $150,000 or the $70,000 for your MBA or the $20,000 for your wedding. Will was silent for a moment. That's different. You offered those things. You said they were gifts. And you took advantage of my generosity. Every time. But Hawaii was the last straw, Will. You lied to me. You planned from the beginning to exclude me from a trip I was paying for. We just wanted to have fun with our friends. Is that so terrible? Then you should have paid for it yourselves. My voice hardened. Instead, you humiliated me. Do you have any idea what it felt like to stand alone in that airport while Jessica called me this old lady? Will was quiet again, and I could almost see him struggling for excuses. Jessica didn't mean that, he finally said. She was just excited about the trip. Stop defending her and start taking responsibility, I snapped, surprising myself with my forcefulness. Both of you made choices. Now you're facing the consequences. Through the window, I saw Jessica gesturing for the phone. Will handed it to her reluctantly. Alice, she began in the placating tone she used when trying to manipulate a situation. This is all a huge misunderstanding. We thought you wouldn't enjoy the activities we had planned. We were trying to be considerate. By taking my money under false pretenses, by not even calling to see if I got home safely after you abandoned me. We were going to pay you back for the villa, Jessica insisted. We've just been busy enjoying the vacation. A vacation I paid for, I reminded her, while I sat at home alone on my 70th birthday. There was a pause, and for a moment I thought I detected genuine remorse in her voice. We didn't think about it that way. That's the problem, Jessica. You never think about anyone but yourselves. I took a deep breath. I've made my decision. The locks stay changed. The will stays changed. The demand for repayment stands. This is ridiculous. Jessica's conciliatory tone vanished. You can't just disown your only son over a vacation. This isn't about a vacation. It's about years of disrespect and exploitation. It's about realizing my son and his wife see me as nothing but a checkbook and a free place to stay. Will took the phone back. Mom, please. We can work this out. Let us come in and talk about it. For a brief moment, I wavered. This was my child asking for another chance. But then I remembered the casual way they had discarded me, the years of taking without gratitude, the calculated manipulation. No, Will, not this time. You have 90 days to arrange repayment, as the letter states. Your things are packed and waiting for you. I suggest you call another taxi. Where are we supposed to go? Will's voice cracked slightly. To the home you pay for with the money you earn, I replied. Like most adults do. Without waiting for a response, I ended the call. Through the window, I saw Will staring at his phone in disbelief. Jessica was pacing angrily, gesturing toward the house. After a heated exchange, I couldn't hear Will began loading the plastic bins into the taxi that had waited for them. Jessica stood to the side, refusing to help her expression stormy. As they loaded the last bin, Will looked up at the house, directly at the window where I stood watching. For a moment, our eyes met through the glass. In his face, I saw shock, anger, but also something else, a dawning recognition of what he had done. He raised his hand slightly, a hesitant half-wave, or perhaps the beginning of a plea. I stepped back from the window, breaking the connection. The taxi pulled away, carrying my son and his wife back to the life they had chosen, one that no longer included unlimited access to my home, my heart, or my bank account. I sank into my favorite armchair, emotionally exhausted, but strangely peaceful. For the first time in years, I had stood up for myself. The house felt different, emptier in some ways, but also cleaner, as if a long, festering wound had finally been lanced. On the table beside me sat a brochure for a Maui resort, a reminder of the vacation that never was. I picked it up, considered it for a moment, then walked to the fireplace and let it fall into the flames. It was time to make new plans, ones that didn't depend on a son who had forgotten how to be family. 6 months have passed since that confrontational day when Will and Jessica returned from Hawaii to find locked doors and packed belongings. 6 months of rebuilding my life on my terms without the constant drain of their financial demands and emotional manipulation. The first few weeks were the hardest. Will called daily at first, his messages alternating between anger justification and occasionally what sounded like genuine remorse. Jessica called too, though her voicemails were primarily focused on the unfairness of my expectations for loan repayment and the humiliation of having to explain to their friends why they suddenly couldn't afford their lifestyle. I listened to each message, but responded to none. This wasn't a negotiation or a punishment designed to extract apologies. It was a fundamental recalibration of our relationship, one that could only begin once they understood that access to me and my resources was no longer unconditional. After 3 weeks, Howard received a letter from an attorney Will had retained, arguing that the loans had been verbal gifts with no expectation of repayment. Howard's response was swift and unequivocal, backed by years of text messages, emails, and bank records documenting the nature of these transactions. "We are prepared to pursue this matter through the courts if necessary," Howard wrote, though I imagine Mr. Thompson would prefer to avoid having his financial exploitation of his elderly mother become a matter of public record. 2 days later, Will called with a different tone. "Mom, I know you're listening even if you're not picking up. I'm sorry. Really sorry. What we did was wrong, and I know it hurt you deeply. I've been thinking about everything, not just Hawaii, but the past several years. I've taken you for granted. Worse than that, I've taken advantage of your generosity. If you're willing to talk, I'd like to try to make things right." It was the first apology that didn't include justifications or minimization. I saved the message, but still didn't call back. Words needed to be followed by actions. As for my own life, the initial loneliness gradually gave way to a sense of liberation. Without Will and Jessica's constant demands on my time, attention, and finances, I discovered how much of myself I had been neglecting. I joined a senior swimming group that met 3 mornings a week at the YMCA, forming friendships with women who shared stories of their own family challenges and triumphs. I volunteered at the hospital where Richard had received treatment reading to children in the oncology ward. I took a watercolor class I had been putting off for years, discovering a modest talent for capturing the changing New England landscapes. Most significantly, I reconnected with my niece Susan, my late sister Jane's daughter. Despite living in Philadelphia with her husband and 2 teenagers, Susan began calling weekly. When she learned about the situation with Will, she was outraged on my behalf. "You gave him everything, Aunt Alice," she said during one of our calls. He should be ashamed. During her spring break, Susan brought her family to visit, the first extended family gathering in my home since Richard died. Watching her children help with dinner preparations and listening to her husband Robert's stories about his work as an architect, I realized how much family connection I had been missing while focusing all my emotional energy on Will. "You're welcome here anytime," I told them as they were leaving. "This house has been too empty for too long." "We'll be back for Thanksgiving," Susan promised, hugging me tightly. "And you're coming to Philly for Christmas. No arguments." 3 months after the Hawaii incident, I made a decision that surprised even me. I used a portion of my travel fund, replenished with the money I was no longer giving to Will, to book a solo trip to Maui. Barbara thought I was crazy. "Why would you want to go there after what happened?" she asked over lunch. "Because I've wanted to see Hawaii since Richard and I first talked about it 30 years ago," I explained. "I'm not letting Will and Jessica take that dream from me, too." The 2 weeks I spent at a beachfront resort in Maui were transformative. I took those sunrise yoga classes on the beach, went snorkeling in crystal-clear waters, attended a traditional luau, and watched the sunset from a catamaran, all experiences I had researched for the family trip. But I also discovered new pleasures making friends with other solo travelers at the hotel bar, taking an impromptu helicopter tour with a retired teacher from Oregon, spending peaceful mornings reading on my private balcony with no one scheduled to accommodate but my own. I returned home with sun-kissed skin, dozens of photographs, and a profound sense of peace. I had reclaimed a dream that had almost been stolen from me, and in doing so proved to myself that my happiness wasn't dependent on Will's presence or approval. 4 months after Hawaii, Will appeared at my door unannounced. He looked different, thinner, less polished, his expression hesitant rather than entitled. "Mom," he said simply when I opened the door. "Can we talk?" I led him to the living room, but didn't offer refreshments or ask about Jessica, who was noticeably absent. "I've started repaying the loans," he said without preamble, placing a check on the coffee table. It was for $10,000, a fraction of what he owed, but a significant gesture nonetheless. I took a second job teaching evening marketing classes at the community college. It's not much, but I can send $2,000 a month now. "What does Jessica think of this arrangement?" I asked, curious rather than accusatory. Will looked down at his hands. "Jessica and I separated 2 months ago. She wasn't interested in making amends or living within our actual means. When I insisted we needed to repay you," she said, "I was choosing you over her." "I'm sorry," I said, and meant it, despite everything I hadn't wanted to cause my son pain. "Don't be," Will replied with surprising firmness. This whole situation forced me to see a lot of things clearly for the first time, including the fact that Jessica and I enabled each other's worst tendencies. We brought out selfishness and entitlement in each other. We talked for over an hour about his job, his new apartment, his therapy sessions aimed at understanding why he had treated me so poorly for so long. He didn't ask to move back in or for financial help even when he mentioned his struggle to afford Boston rents on his reduced household income. As he was leaving, he paused at the door. "I don't expect your forgiveness, Mom. What we did, was unforgivable. I just want a chance to show you that I can be better, that I can be the son you deserve." I didn't rush to offer absolution or restoration of our previous relationship. Instead, I suggested something new. "Let's have dinner next Sunday. Just dinner, nothing more. We'll see where things go from there." His relief was visible. "I'd like that very much." Our relationship is different now. More careful, more honest, with clear boundaries on both sides. We have Sunday dinner twice a month. Will continues to send monthly payments. We talk about real things: his career aspirations, my new painting hobby books we've both read. He has never asked for money again. Jessica filed for divorce 3 months after their separation. She still occasionally posts luxury vacation photos on social media, now featuring a new boyfriend who apparently has the financial resources she requires. As for me, I've discovered that 70 is not too late for reinvention. Next month, Susan and her family are joining me for a Mediterranean cruise. My treat, but with no strings attached and no expectation of anything but shared enjoyment of each other's company. Have you ever had to establish difficult boundaries with family members who took your generosity for granted? How did you find the courage to stand up for yourself? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if my story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more reflections on family self-respect and finding joy in unexpected places. Don't forget to share this video with someone who might need to hear that it's never too late to demand respect and rebuild a life on your own terms. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, the family we choose to build can be even stronger than the family we were born into.